When I first read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I didn't find a book about success. I found a book about character, about who we are when no one's watching, and how that inner strength shapes everything we do. Stephen Covey didn't write about tricks or shortcuts. He wrote about principles, timeless truths that govern effectiveness in every area of life: work, relationships, and purpose. He believed that real change begins from the inside out, that we can't truly lead others until we can lead ourselves. So today, I want to take you on a journey through these 7 habits, not as a list, but as a transformation, a story of how ordinary people can become extraordinary by changing how they see the world and themselves. Habit 1. Be proactive. Covey begins with a truth that feels simple but is deeply human. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. That's the essence of being proactive. Most people live in what he calls the circle of concern, always reacting to what they can't change: the weather, the economy, other people's opinions. But effective people focus on their circle of influence, the things they can actually affect: their attitude, effort, choices. Imagine 2 people stuck in traffic. One curses and blames the world. The other uses the time to think, breathe, or listen to an audiobook. The situation is the same. The difference is choice. Covey reminds us that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose our response, and that's where freedom begins. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. The second habit is about vision, knowing where you're going before you start moving. Covey invites us to imagine attending our own funeral. He asks, what would people say about you? Your family, your friends, your colleagues. That exercise isn't meant to be morbid. It's meant to clarify purpose. Because if we don't decide what truly matters, we'll spend our lives climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. He introduces the concept of the personal mission statement, a written expression of your values and goals. It's like a compass that keeps you aligned when life's distractions pull you in every direction. So before you chase success, ask, what kind of person do I want to become? Effectiveness begins with intention. Habit 3. Put first things first. If the second habit is about vision, the third is about discipline, living according to that vision every day. This habit is summarized in one word: prioritization. Most of us are busy, but few are truly effective. We chase what's urgent instead of what's important. Covey uses the famous time management matrix. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important: crises, deadlines, emergencies. Quadrant 2 is not urgent but important: planning, relationships, learning, exercise. Quadrant 3 is urgent but not important: interruptions, social media, distractions. Quadrant 4 is not urgent and not important: time-wasting habits. Highly effective people live mostly in Quadrant 2. They invest in prevention, preparation, and growth, so crises don't control their lives. He tells the story of a man filling a jar with rocks, pebbles, and sand. If you start with sand, there's no room for the rocks. But if you start with the big rocks, your priorities, everything else fits. That's the essence of Habit 3. Manage your life by principles, not pressures. Habit 4. Think win-win. At this point, Covey shifts from self-mastery to relationship mastery. The fourth habit is about how we see others, not as competitors, but as partners. Most people think in win-lose terms. If someone else wins, I must have lost. But effective people believe in win-win, the idea that we can both succeed, that cooperation creates more value than competition. He explains that true win-win thinking is rooted in abundance mentality, the belief that there's enough success, respect, and opportunity for everyone. In contrast, the scarcity mindset sees life as a zero-sum game, and that mindset poisons trust. For example, in business, a leader who empowers employees rather than controls them often gets higher performance. In relationships, partners who seek mutual benefit grow stronger together. Win-win doesn't mean compromise or weakness. It means seeking solutions where everyone walks away satisfied and respected. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This habit might be the hardest because it requires empathy before ego. Most people listen not to understand, but to reply. We wait for our turn to speak instead of truly hearing what's being said. Covey calls this empathetic listening, the ability to see the world through another's eyes before offering advice or judgment. He tells the story of a father and son. The father complains, "My son doesn't listen to me." Covey replies, "If your son doesn't listen to you, it's because you don't understand him first." When we listen deeply, we don't just hear words, we hear feelings, fears, and needs. And only then can we communicate effectively. It's the foundation of trust and the bridge to influence. Habit 6. Synergize. When two or more people work together, the result can be greater than the sum of their parts. That's synergy. Covey compares it to nature. When you plant two plants close together, their roots intertwine and grow stronger. Synergy is born when people value differences instead of fearing them. Instead of my way or your way, we create a third way, something better than either alone. He tells how creative teams, when built on trust and openness, often produce breakthroughs no individual could achieve. Synergy requires humility and courage. Humility to admit others might see what we can't, and courage to share ideas without fear of judgment. It's the habit of collaboration over competition. And finally, Covey ends with a habit that keeps all others alive: renewal. He tells the story of a man sawing a tree for hours. When advised to stop and sharpen his saw, the man replies, "I don't have time to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy sawing." But if he took time to sharpen, the work would be faster, easier, better. This is Covey's metaphor for self-renewal, caring for the 4 dimensions of life: physical, exercise, rest, nutrition; mental, learning, reading, creativity; emotional, social, relationships, empathy, love; spiritual, purpose, reflection, alignment with values. When we renew ourselves regularly, we prevent burnout and expand capacity. Effectiveness, Covey says, is not about doing more. It's about becoming more. Putting it all together, the inside-out path. The 7 habits aren't quick hacks. They're a framework for living consciously. The first 3 habits move us from dependence to independence. The next 3 take us from independence to interdependence. And the 7th keeps us balanced through continuous renewal. Together, they form a cycle: growth, mastery, and renewal. Covey's philosophy reminds us that true success isn't just external achievement. It's inner alignment, when our character, habits, and actions all serve the same purpose. And finally, as I close this book, I think of what Covey called the space between stimulus and response, that tiny, invisible moment where choice lives. Every habit in this book begins there, in that space where we decide who we want to be. Effectiveness isn't about control. It's about responsibility. It's about taking ownership of ourselves, our time, and our relationships. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is that effectiveness is not a destination, it's a practice, a daily renewal of vision, discipline, empathy, and faith. Because, as Covey teaches, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. Change yourself, and your world will follow. And if this journey through the 7 habits of highly effective people made you pause, reflect, or see something differently, then maybe it's worth sharing with someone who needs it too.
If you'd like to keep exploring books that change how we think and live, I'd love for you to stay with me here. Just leave a like, subscribe to FROMBOOK, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice helps this space grow, and together we'll keep uncovering the wisdom hidden between the pages.